I was never the type to make a scene. My name's Marcus, I'm 34, and I've always been the guy who keeps things calm at family events. The one who smooths things over, who makes the awkward joke when tension gets too high, who helps clean up even when I wasn't the one who made the mess. And for most of my life, that's exactly what my family expected of me, to stay quiet, to be reasonable, and above all, to not cause trouble. But something snapped at my daughter's 6th birthday party. Let me back up. I'm a single dad to a sweet little girl named Ellie. Her mom and I split years ago. No messy custody battle or anything dramatic. We just weren't right for each other. Ellie lives with me full time, and I don't say this to brag, but I've built my entire world around giving her the childhood I never had. She's got a small bookshelf that takes up a whole wall in her room. She wears dinosaur pajamas and paints her nails in all different colors. She loves animals and space and telling long, winding stories about the fairies she insists live in the backyard. I live for that kid. So this year, I decided to go all out for her birthday. Nothing crazy. I'm not made of money, but enough to make her feel special. We hosted it at a local park with a shaded area I rented weeks in advance. I made decorations by hand, picked out animal-themed cupcakes, set up games, music, and even hired a girl from my work's intern program to wear a glittery costume and do face painting. Ellie had been counting down the days for weeks. I invited close friends, a few parents from her school, and, reluctantly, my sister Rachel. Rachel is difficult. She's 4 years younger than me, has a son named Kyle, and a very firm belief that the world owes her something. She's one of those people who talks over everyone and never listens unless it's about her. If you've ever had someone borrow something for 6 months and then get offended when you ask for it back, you've met my sister. Rachel and I weren't always like this. We used to be close when we were kids, but something changed after she had Kyle. She started showing up less and less, and when she did, she always had some criticism about my parenting, my house, even the way I talked to Ellie. She liked to make little digs like, "Must be nice to only have one kid," or "Some of us can't afford to spend hours on homemade decorations." Still, I kept inviting her to things. Because that's what family does, right? You keep trying. Kyle is 8, 2 years older than Ellie, and not exactly gentle. He's the kind of kid who grabs toys out of younger kids' hands, breaks things, and then plays the victim if anyone calls him out. Rachel brushes it all off as spirited. When I gently asked her once to talk to him after he shoved Ellie during a barbecue, she rolled her eyes and said, "You're just too sensitive. Boys roughhouse." Anyway, the day of the party arrives. Ellie's wearing her little fox dress, the one she picked out herself, and the sun is shining. The cupcakes are holding up in the shade, and for a while, it actually feels perfect. I'm running around refilling juice boxes and helping kids find the bathroom, and Ellie is running around with her friends, giggling. Then Rachel shows up. Late, of course. She struts in wearing sunglasses like she's arriving at a movie premiere, loudly announcing, "Sorry, parking was insane," which was weird because the lot was mostly empty. Kyle's dragging behind her with a bored look and a Nintendo Switch in his hands. No wrapped present, no card, nothing. Just Rachel carrying her iced coffee and a bag of half-eaten chips. I force a smile. "Hey, glad you made it." She barely glances at me before turning to the kids. "Kyle, go play or something. I need to sit down." And just like that, she drops into one of the picnic benches, scrolling through her phone like she's doing us all a favor by being there. I shake it off. Not worth it. Ellie doesn't seem to notice, and I'm not going to let Rachel ruin her day. We get to the gift opening part of the party. I hadn't planned to do a whole performance of it. I know not every kid likes opening presents in front of everyone, but Ellie insisted. She wanted to thank everyone personally. So, I helped her into the seat next to the big gift table, and all the kids gathered around. Rachel stayed planted on the bench, of course, still sipping her coffee. Ellie's eyes lit up as she opened each present. A coloring book set, a glittery unicorn pillow, a small telescope from her godmother. Then she opened a rectangular box wrapped in deep purple paper. It was from me. I had saved up for it for weeks. Inside was a Kindle Kids edition, something Ellie had been asking for since she started learning to read on her own. I figured it would grow with her, a way to get her into chapter books and stories without me spending $10 every time she finished one. I'd even preloaded it with a few books I knew she'd love. Her face lit up like the sun. "Daddy, it's perfect," she squealed, hugging it to her chest. I smiled so wide my face hurt. That's when Kyle, who'd been standing a little too close the whole time, suddenly snatched it out of her hands. Cool. This is mine now, he said, holding it up like he'd just won something. Ellie blinked, stunned. Hey, that's mine. Kyle shrugged, already turning away. You can't read big books anyway. I stepped forward. Hey, Kyle, give that back to Ellie, please. That was a gift for her. Rachel didn't even look up from her phone. Marcus, don't be so dramatic. Kids will be kids. Ellie's eyes welled up, her bottom lip trembling. I crouched down next to her and gently put my hand on her back. It's okay, sweetheart. We'll get it back. I turned to Rachel. Seriously, that was a gift for Ellie. He can't just take it. Rachel finally looked up and actually laughed. Oh my God, are you really making this a thing? It's not like it's a car. Don't be cheap. A few of the other parents chuckled nervously, unsure what to say. One mom glanced at me with a sympathetic look, but said nothing. I stood there, stunned, as Kyle marched over to the bench, sat beside his mom, and started messing with the Kindle like it belonged to him. Rachel leaned over, said something to him I couldn't hear, and then turned back to her phone. Ellie buried her face in my shoulder. I want to go home. I should have caused a scene. I should have taken it back right then and there. But everyone was watching. My daughter's friends, their parents, neighbors. And I could already hear how Rachel would spin it. How I snatched something from a child and overreacted at a kid's party. So I didn't. I swallowed it. I smiled. And I helped clean up. I told Ellie I'd fix it. That it was okay. That her birthday was still special. But that night, when I finally got home and Ellie had gone to bed, still sniffling into her pillow, I stood in my quiet kitchen staring at the empty box the Kindle had come in. My jaw clenched. My fists tightened. And that's when I decided I was done. Done playing nice. Done letting Rachel use me. Done letting her take. Because what Rachel didn't realize, or maybe just didn't care to remember, was that for years, she'd been borrowing something of mine. Something valuable. Something she thought I'd just never come looking for. But she was wrong. And the next day, I started putting my plan in motion. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat on the couch long after Ellie had gone to bed, watching the screen of my phone dim and brighten as messages from coworkers and a few parents from the party trickled in. Some were polite thank yous. Others shared photos they took, but none mentioned what had happened with Rachel or Kyle. Except one. It was from Vanessa, a mom I barely knew. Her son Jack had only recently started playing with Ellie at school. Her message was simple. Hey, I'm sorry for what happened today. That wasn't right. Ellie is such a sweet girl. Let me know if she'd like to come over sometime. Jack keeps talking about her. I stared at that message for a while, rereading it. It shouldn't have meant much, but it did. It was the only acknowledgement from anyone that what happened wasn't normal. That I wasn't crazy. That maybe, finally, someone else saw it. Because the truth is, this wasn't about one birthday party. That day wasn't the beginning. It was the tipping point. Rachel had been crossing lines for years. The only difference now was that I'd been trying to ignore it, to be the bigger person, as my mom always used to say. But all that got me was a daughter crying on her birthday and a thief playing Minecraft on a stolen Kindle. The next morning, Ellie was quiet at breakfast. She poked at her cereal, the spoon clinking softly against the bowl. Sweetheart, I asked gently, do you want to talk about yesterday? She shrugged. It's okay. Kyle needed it more, right? That hit me like a freight train. No, he didn't. And it wasn't his to take. She blinked up at me, eyes round. But Aunt Rachel said. I cut her off gently. Aunt Rachel says a lot of things. That doesn't make them true. That was the moment I knew I had to do something. Not just for me, but for Ellie. She was starting to internalize this. To believe that letting people take from her was some sort of kindness. That sharing meant giving up what you love just to keep the peace. And that's the one lesson I never wanted her to learn. I dropped her off at school, then took a detour on my way to work. There was something I needed to see. Rachel lived in the old duplex my grandfather had left behind, one of the last properties he owned outright. It wasn't glamorous, but it was in a good part of town and well-maintained. And technically, it was mine. At least, on paper. I pulled up slowly in front of the house and stared. Her car was there, parked at a weird angle like always. Kyle's bike was in the yard, helmet nowhere in sight. The blinds were shut tight, but I could hear the faint hum of a TV from inside. She'd lived there rent-free for 5 years. That's the thing Rachel never liked to talk about. The reason she always dodged financial conversations or got defensive if anyone brought up money. When Grandpa passed, His will left the duplex to me. I was 27 then, still figuring things out, and Rachel had just been laid off from a job she only kept for 6 months. She called me crying, saying she and Kyle were going to be homeless, that she just needed a few months to get back on her feet. I didn't hesitate. I told her she could move in, no rent. I even helped her with the utilities the first year. Then 1 year became 2, 2 became 5, and every time I brought it up, gently, she made me feel like the bad guy. You make more than me, she'd say. Kyle needs stability. Or, you wouldn't understand what it's like to raise a kid alone, as if I wasn't doing the same. I never pushed back. I kept waiting for her to take initiative. I thought maybe one day she'd just say thank you, offer to start paying something, anything. But no. Instead, she acted like it was hers. She had no idea I still had the deed, that I paid the taxes every year without her ever offering a dime, that I got the emails whenever something needed fixing and always told the handyman to bill me. I sat there for a long time that morning, staring at the house. She'd been using me for years, and now she'd used my daughter. That's when the shift happened in my mind. That cold, quiet clarity that comes not with rage, but with resolve. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to threaten. I wasn't even going to argue. I was going to end this. But first, I needed to understand exactly how deep the hole went. So I started digging. I pulled up my old documents, the will, the deed, the tax receipts, the maintenance bills, everything that proved, without question, that I owned the duplex. Then I started tracking the utilities. She'd moved most of them under her name, probably to look like the official tenant. But the moment I checked the county records online, there it was, my name, listed as the property owner. She'd never even tried to transfer it. Maybe she assumed I'd forget. Maybe she thought I was too soft to ever do anything. Then I checked her social media. Big mistake. Or maybe, the best thing I could have done. Rachel had always been careless with what she posted. Most of it was cringy mom influencer stuff, reposted memes about wine o'clock and boy moms, blurry photos of Kyle with messy captions like, "My world," and the occasional dig at haters or jealous family. But buried in between, I found photos that made my stomach churn. A picture of Kyle holding a Kindle, Ellie's Kindle, in the back seat of her car, captioned, "Early birthday surprise for my little guy. He's been so patient lately and deserved a treat." Posted that night. Not a single mention of Ellie. Not even a thanks. Then a second post, the next day, a picture of her living room. My living room, technically, with a new gaming chair in the corner and a caption about how Kyle's new reading tablet inspired her to give his space a mini upgrade. So it wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a slip. She knew, and she was bragging. That was the breaking point. But the betrayal wasn't done yet. A week later, Ellie came home from school unusually quiet. She kicked off her shoes, climbed up onto the couch, and sat with her arms wrapped around her knees. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting beside her. She hesitated, then whispered, "Kyle told everyone at school that I cried at my party. He said I was a crybaby who didn't know how to share." My heart dropped. "What?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "He said I ruined my own party and that you yelled at his mom. He said his mom said you were mentally unstable and that you're too poor to buy me a real present, so you blamed him." I saw red. That night, after Ellie was asleep, I pulled out my laptop and checked the school calendar. Kyle's birthday? 2 weeks away. And that was it. That was the perfect storm. Rachel had just thrown gasoline on everything and handed me the match. And I was going to light it, not with fire, but with precision. But I couldn't do it alone. So I made a call to someone Rachel didn't even know I was still in contact with. Our cousin James. James and I hadn't talked much since our early 20s. He used to live a few towns over, but we'd grown apart after he took a job out of state. Still, we'd reconnected a little after Grandpa's death, and he was the one person who knew the full situation with Rachel and the house, because he'd been there when Grandpa drafted the will. When I told him what happened, he didn't even hesitate. "I'm in," he said. "Whatever you need." And suddenly, I wasn't alone. I had an ally. Rachel had taken too much, for too long, and she had no idea what was coming. I wish I could tell you that after that call with James, things moved quickly, like some movie scene where the hero pulls the lever and justice crashes down in one dramatic swoop. But real life doesn't work like that. Revenge, at least the kind that sticks, takes time, planning, restraint. And honestly, I wasn't in the best place to move fast anyway, because before things got better, they got worse. Much worse. The fallout from Ellie's party didn't stop with a stolen Kindle or a few mean schoolyard rumors. Rachel wasn't just content letting Kyle mock Ellie. She started sowing seeds of poison among the rest of the family, too. Quietly. Strategically. It started with a call from my mom. "I heard things got tense at the party," she said, in that voice she always used when she didn't want to accuse, but also didn't really want to listen. I sighed. Tense is putting it lightly. Kyle stole Ellie's birthday gift. Rachel let him keep it. There was a pause. Rachel said it wasn't a big deal. Of course she did. She said you overreacted. That you embarrassed her in front of other parents. I clenched my jaw. Did she also say it was Ellie's gift? That Kyle snatched it out of her hands and then bragged about it the next day at school. She said Kyle's been struggling lately. That maybe it was a misunderstanding. I bit back the sarcastic comment that leapt into my throat. A misunderstanding? What part? The theft or the mockery? But I didn't say it. Instead, I just said, "Mom, I'm done making excuses for her." That's when Mom sighed. "Marcus, she's your sister." I let the silence hang before answering. "And Ellie is your granddaughter." She didn't have a response to that. That call set the tone for the next 2 weeks. I didn't hear from Rachel, not directly, at least, but the indirect messages came loud and clear. Through my aunt's passive-aggressive Facebook posts about people who forget family comes first. Through a string of texts from my cousin Leah asking if I was okay, and if I really blew up at a children's party. Rachel had gone full smear campaign. And because I refused to engage, her version of the story was the only one most people heard. I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. Even knowing the truth, even having the moral high ground, it still felt like I was the one being pushed into a corner. Isolated. Dismissed. There was one night, about a week later, when I came home from work and just sat in my car with the engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the dashboard like it had answers. Ellie was at a sleepover, and the house would be quiet, too quiet. The kind that presses against your chest until it feels like you can't breathe. That was my low point. Not because of the gift, not because of the lies, but because, deep down, I realized something ugly. I had allowed this. I had enabled Rachel for years. I had handed her the duplex on a silver platter. I had stayed silent every time she crossed a line. And worst of all, I had let Ellie think that kindness meant accepting mistreatment. That realization hurt more than anything Rachel had ever said or done. But it also changed me. Because once I saw it, really saw it, I couldn't unsee it. And I wasn't going to let it continue. The next day, I started the real work. The quiet work. The rebuild. First, I sat Ellie down and explained what was happening. Not in a way that would make her hate her aunt, but in a way that gave her clarity. I told her the truth. That not everyone who smiles at you has your best interest at heart. And that sometimes people use the word family like a shield to avoid consequences. "But I thought being family means you always forgive," she said softly. I looked at her for a long time before answering. "It means you try," I said. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. And it doesn't mean letting someone hurt you again and again." She nodded, chewing her lip. "So what happens now?" "Now," I thought. "Now we rise." I started by getting Ellie a new Kindle. It wasn't about the device. It was about showing her that doing the right thing didn't mean losing out. That grown-ups fix what's broken. That when someone takes from you, it doesn't mean you lose. I bought it in cash, wrapped it myself. And this time, I gave it to her on a random Tuesday night after dinner. Just the two of us. No audience. No pressure. She cried when she opened it. Hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs would crack. Then I made another quiet move. I drafted a formal rental agreement for the duplex. James, who used to work in real estate contracts, helped me review it. It wasn't cruel, just standard. Reasonable rent for the area. A 60-day notice clause. Maintenance responsibilities outlined. I even included a grace period, 1 month free, to adjust. I didn't deliver it right away. Not yet. Instead, I went back to my inbox. Vanessa, the mom who had messaged me after the party, had followed up, asking if Ellie could join her son Jack for a library outing. I hesitated, then said yes. And that outing turned into a friendship. Not just for the kids, for me too. Vanessa was kind, level-headed, and fiercely protective of her son. When I told her about the fallout with Rachel, she didn't say, "Oh, I'm sure she meant well." She said, "I'm sorry. That's not okay." That validation meant more than she probably realized. We started talking more, sometimes just texting about school events, Other times about parenting challenges, late-night chats about burnout and boundaries. There was no romantic pressure, just support. The kind I hadn't felt from anyone in my family in a long, long time. Meanwhile, James and I kept preparing. He helped me dig deeper, checking public databases, verifying the tax history on the duplex, pulling Rachel's utility payments, and making sure there were no loopholes she could hide behind. We double-checked the property lines, the legal language in Grandpa's will, everything. And during all of this, I kept being a dad. I volunteered to chaperone Ellie's zoo trip. I started meal prepping again. I made her laugh with bad dinosaur impressions at bedtime. I let her paint my nails on a rainy Sunday afternoon because, as she said, foxes need purple claws. I wasn't just recovering. I was living. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the smaller sibling in my own story. I felt like the man Grandpa trusted when he handed me that deed. Like someone Ellie could look up to, not just because I loved her, but because I protected her. And then came the twist I wasn't expecting. Rachel called me. It was the first time we'd spoken since the party. "Hey," she said, like nothing had happened. "Listen, I need a favor." I almost laughed. "What kind of favor?" There was a pause. "I'm planning Kyle's birthday party next weekend, and the bounce house place we wanted is fully booked. But I remember you had some guy who did events for Ellie's thing, the one with the face painting." My jaw dropped. She was calling to ask for my help throwing her kid's party, the same kid who bullied my daughter and stole her gift. Unreal. "Rachel," I said slowly, "you do realize you still haven't returned Ellie's Kindle." There was a scoff. "Oh my God, Marcus. Still with that? He loves it, okay? Just let it go." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse. I just said, "No, I won't be helping you. And we'll talk again soon, officially." Then I hung up and printed the rental agreement. The envelope sat on my kitchen table for 3 days. Not because I was having second thoughts. I wasn't. I had never been more certain about anything in my life. But after years of swallowing my pride and biting my tongue, taking action felt surreal. I kept rereading the rental agreement, flipping through the neatly stapled pages, half expecting to find some typo or missing clause. But it was airtight. James made sure of that. Still, the weight of what I was about to do pressed on me in weird ways. Not guilt, but memory. I thought about all the times I let Rachel slide. About the Thanksgiving she showed up 2 hours late with Kyle in mismatched socks and demanded I reheat everything. About the time she borrowed my car for a weekend and returned it 3 weeks later with an empty tank and no explanation. About the way she rolled her eyes when I told her Ellie had gotten a reading award at school. About how she'd made me feel stupid for caring. But this wasn't about spite anymore. It was about taking back what she had stolen. Not just the duplex, not just Ellie's gift, but my spine. The moment came quietly on a Thursday afternoon. I picked Ellie up from school, we stopped for frozen yogurt, and when we got home, I placed the sealed envelope inside my glove compartment. Then I looked at Ellie, who was in the back seat humming some made-up song about jelly beans, and said, "Do you want to visit Aunt Rachel's for a bit?" She paused. "Will Kyle be there?" "Probably." She wrinkled her nose. "Can I bring my sketchbook?" "Of course." We drove in silence the rest of the way. Rachel's duplex was just as messy as I remembered. A collection of kids' shoes strewn across the porch, a sagging patio chair tilted against the wall, and a dying potted plant she'd probably forgotten about. I parked at the curb, walked Ellie to the door, and rang the bell. Rachel opened the door in leggings and an oversized hoodie. Her hair was up in a bun, and she looked exhausted, but not in the way single parents look. In the way people look when they've grown used to comfort and expect the world to keep handing it to them. "Hey," she said, fake smile already in place. "Hey," I replied, handing her a small tote. Ellie packed snacks. She waved her hand dismissively. "Whatever. She knows where the fridge is." Ellie stepped inside quietly. I watched her go, my heart twisting slightly as Kyle glanced up from the couch and immediately snatched her sketchbook from her hands. "Cool. I'm gonna draw explosions." Ellie didn't even protest. She just let him take it. I turned back to Rachel, who was already half turned to go back inside. "Actually," I said, pulling the envelope from my jacket pocket, "this is for you." She looked at it like it might explode. "What's this?" "Your new lease. 60 days notice starts today." For a second, she didn't react. Then her eyes narrowed. "You're kicking me out." "No," I said calmly. "I'm offering you the chance to become a tenant. Officially." "You've got to be kidding. You've lived here for 5 years rent-free." I've covered taxes, maintenance, and repairs. You've never even said thank you. That's what family is for, she snapped. No, family supports each other. Family doesn't steal from your kid and brag about it online. Her face went red. Oh my God, this is still about that stupid Kindle. It's about everything. She waved the papers in the air like they were infected. I don't have money for rent. What am I supposed to do? Live in my car? You have options, I said coolly. There's a month grace period. Use it. Get a job. Apply for assistance. Or move. You're an adult, Rachel. You don't get to play helpless forever. She laughed bitterly. You've always thought you were better than me. No, I said. I wanted better for you. There's a difference. And with that, I turned and walked back to my car. It took everything in me not to look back. That was step 1. Step 2 started the next day. James and I met for lunch at a quiet diner just outside of town. He slid a folder across the table. Utilities, phone records, and one interesting surprise, he said with a smirk. I opened the folder and flipped through it. One page caught my eye, a bank transaction summary showing that Rachel had, in fact, deposited $500 into her account the day before Kyle's birthday last year, then immediately spent $300 on a Fossil men's watch from an online outlet. The same watch she claimed was a family heirloom she had saved up for all year when she gave it to our dad. James leaned back, sipping his coffee. She's been taking advantage of everyone. Not just you. Can we prove the money was stolen? I asked. Probably not. But if you're thinking long-term, you don't need proof of everything. Just patterns. We outlined the next steps that afternoon. Deliver the formal notice to Rachel. Done. Transfer the property into a managed trust. In process. Cut off all non-essential support. Utilities I was still paying for. Handyman I was still contracting. Begin documenting every exchange moving forward. And finally, tell the truth. That last part wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. I decided to write a single email to the rest of the family. Not dramatic, not angry, just honest. I explained the situation. I included a scan of the rental agreement. I clarified that Rachel had never paid rent, had taken from Ellie, and had refused accountability. Then I ended it with this. You are all free to draw your own conclusions, but I will no longer accept silence in the face of mistreatment. If you choose to support her at the expense of my daughter's dignity, that's your choice, but it will be from a distance. I hit send and turned off my phone for the rest of the night. The reactions, when they came, were mixed. My cousin Leah messaged me a long apology, saying she had no idea how deep it went. My aunt never replied. My mom sent me a single sentence. I wish things were different. But the most surprising response came from my dad. We hadn't been close since I was a teenager. He wasn't around much when I was growing up, and by the time I had Ellie, we were more like polite acquaintances than father and son. But he called me the next morning. I heard what happened, he said, voice gruff. That true? About Rachel? Every word. He was quiet for a moment. Then, she gave me that watch last year, said she bought it with a bonus from her job. She wasn't even working, I said. Didn't think so. Another pause. I'm sorry, Marcus, for not seeing it sooner. That hit harder than I expected. We talked for 20 minutes, longer than we had in years. By the end, he offered to help me with legal fees if Rachel tried to fight back. I thanked him, but said I had it covered. Because I did. I had Ellie. I had James. I had clarity. And I had a plan. Rachel still didn't know everything I was setting in motion. She didn't know I had filed the property under a legal trust to prevent her from faking claims. She didn't know I had contacted a property manager to start lining up new tenants if she refused the lease. She didn't know that James had connected me with a lawyer who specialized in recovering stolen property and was very interested in the Kindle situation. But the biggest surprise was still coming. Kyle's birthday was fast approaching, and Rachel was scrambling to throw a party that would top Ellie's, even without a bounce house or face painting or decorations. I knew this because Vanessa, whose son Jack was invited, shared the group text where Rachel begged the school moms to bring snacks, help clean, and bring extra chairs. I didn't respond. I just waited, because the perfect opportunity was right around the corner. And when it came, I would be ready. Kyle's birthday landed on a Sunday. Bright, breezy, and cloudless. The kind of day that practically begs for celebration. Rachel hosted it at the same park I had rented for Ellie's party, only she hadn't paid for the shaded area. That had already been booked. By me. Not for another party. For a quiet picnic. With Ellie. And Vanessa. And Jack. Let me back up a little. 2 days before the party, I received a group text from Rachel. Not just to me, but to half the extended family. Kyle's party is this Sunday at Ridge Park at 2 p.m. Potluck style. Please bring drinks, snacks, folding chairs. We're doing it casual this year. Casual, huh? That meant she hadn't reserved a single thing. Ridge Park is city-run. If you want the covered pavilion or the big lawn area, you book it online and pay in advance. And I had done exactly that. 3 weeks prior, right after she hung up on me over the bounce house fiasco. My reservation was from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Pavilion, tables, power outlets, the whole thing. It wasn't an act of pettiness. It was strategy. Rachel assumed that because I hadn't responded or confronted her, I was backing down. Again, she had no idea that I had quietly taken control of every variable she used to manipulate me. So when I showed up at Ridge Park that Sunday at 11:30 a.m. with Ellie, 3 large pizza boxes, and a Bluetooth speaker, I was fully within my rights. Ellie set up her sketchbook and crayons on one end of the table, and Vanessa brought fresh lemonade and a small cake, just in case we wanted to stay longer. At exactly 1:58 p.m., Rachel arrived. She was wearing platform sandals, sunglasses, and a smug expression. Kyle followed behind her carrying a soccer ball and a stack of paper plates. Behind them trailed a few other kids and their moms, one of whom was dragging a large cooler. Another held a grocery store cake. Rachel stopped short when she saw us. At first, she smiled, the kind of tight, polite smile people use when they're confused but trying to stay civil. "Hey, Marcus," she said slowly. "Didn't expect you here." "I booked the pavilion," I said calmly. "Weeks ago." She blinked. "What? For a picnic?" I added. "It's reserved until 4. I watched the moment realization hit. Her smile faltered. "Wait, but I sent out invites." "To public property," I said, still keeping my tone even. "But this area? This isn't first come first serve. It's by reservation." One of the moms behind her raised her eyebrows. "You didn't book it?" Rachel shot her a look, then turned back to me. "You did this on purpose." I shrugged. "You've known about Kyle's birthday for a year. I booked this for my daughter. You didn't bother to check if it was available." Kyle walked up to Ellie's table and reached for her crayons. She calmly pulled them away. "Not this time," she said. "Simple, quiet, strong." Rachel stepped forward. "You seriously think this makes you the good guy?" I stood slowly. "No, I think taking my daughter's gift and pretending it was yours makes you the bad guy. And that pretending to care about family only when you need favors makes you a hypocrite." A few of the moms were already stepping away. 2 of them whispered something to each other. Another quietly began steering her kid toward the playground. Rachel looked around, realizing the tide was turning. "You're really going to make a scene here? At a child's birthday party?" "I'm not making anything," I said. "I'm just here with my daughter. You're the one who planned a party at a spot you didn't rent." Rachel's face twisted, but she couldn't say much. Not with witnesses. Not with the rules clearly posted on the bulletin board behind us. She stood there for a second longer, then spun on her heel and stormed off toward the open grass near the sidewalk. The rest of her group followed, awkward and silent. They ended up trying to hold the party on the lawn, juggling paper plates on their laps, cake melting in the sun, kids asking where the bathrooms were. I watched from the shade as Rachel struggled to hold everything together, fake laughing, talking loudly, pretending none of it bothered her. But I could see it in her eyes. She knew. She knew she had finally pushed too far. But that wasn't the real revenge. That was just the overture. 2 days later, I received a text. "Did you seriously send me an eviction letter? Are you insane?" I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my lawyer. Because the grace period had expired. Rachel hadn't signed the lease, which meant the clock had run out. 60 days after she received the agreement, I officially filed notice of noncompliance. My lawyer drafted the eviction papers. We followed every protocol, documented every step. My lawyer even recommended an independent property inspector visit the duplex to assess damages. Turns out, Rachel had broken 2 cabinets, let the sink leak for months, and had spray paint marks in Kyle's room. All noted, all photographed. She called me 6 times in one afternoon. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail sobbing, saying Kyle would be traumatized. I saved it, just in case. I didn't want her homeless. I wasn't out for blood. So I offered her one final deal, not out of mercy, but to control the narrative. If she left by the end of the week, I'd waive the damage fees. That gave her 5 more days. She tried to bargain. I didn't respond. She left on the 5th day. I drove by the next morning and saw a for rent sign from the property management company posted out front. Rachel's car was gone. A week later, I got a final message from her. You ruined our family. I stared at it for a long time, and then I deleted it. Because no, I didn't ruin anything. I rebuilt my family from the ground up. Ellie had started smiling more again, drawing foxes and planets and galaxies without anyone stealing her paper. She had playdates with kids who respected her, a Kindle loaded with books, and a father who finally stood tall. Vanessa and I kept seeing each other, still casually, still cautiously. But every time we talked, it felt real. Safe. Like maybe the future didn't have to be weighed down by the past. And one night, as I tucked Ellie into bed, she looked up at me and said, Daddy? Yeah, baby. You know how Kyle took my gift and said it was his? Yeah. She smiled sleepily. It's okay now, because I still got something better. What's that? You. I swallowed the lump in my throat and kissed her forehead. And that was the moment I realized. Revenge isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's peace. Earned, protected, owned, and finally mine.